Our journey continues. From our start in the antiverse, our intrepid monad has popped into the universe, formed the foundation of the 49 planes of matter, and has circulated through the entire universe 3 times. At the end of this incredibly long sojourn, it received a jolt from the second logos and found itself passively conscious. So, where is our monad now? It is on the cosmic physical plane, right at the top of it, plane 43. From here, it begins a new adventure, but one that it still does not have any control over. As a primary atom, the monad got shunted around by more highly developed monads to meet the needs and purposes of those monads. I am afraid to say that it is business as usual. The monad may have been elevated to the rank of a secondary atom, and it may be passively conscious. It still, however, can initiate nothing by itself. However, if another actively conscious monad were to give it an instruction, it is able and willing to carry it out faithfully to the letter. In fact, it is safe to categorize a secondary atom as a robot. This atom is called by another name that begins to give it more of a personality. It is called an elemental essence. Note the word essence, because the term more often bandied about is elemental. These two structures, although they exist in a hierarchy of activity, are quite different in their execution. But before I go on to discuss what exactly an elemental is, I wish to focus on its objective. Now, you may well say, how can something that is passively conscious have an objective? The answer is that technically it cannot. But there is underpinning all the monads existing in the universe the law of development. This states that all monads have no choice in the matter of furthering their development inexorably. They may take many twists and turns along the way, as we shall see later on in their development, but develop they must. So what is the objective of our elemental at this stage in its life? It is to develop to its next milestone, which is to become actively conscious. It does not know this itself, but something seems to drive it on inexorably. To achieve that, considering it starts its journey from plane 43, it tries to descend as far into matter as possible. To achieve this, it has to involve. Note the term involve into denser planes of matter. This is an inherent drive that it may not comprehend, but it is there nevertheless. Now, let's focus on our solar system. Esoterics informs us that there are 9 grades of secondary matter in our solar system. Why 9 grades when there are only 7 planes or worlds in our system? The reason is that there are 9 triad levels in our solar system. I will discuss these in greater detail in future presentations, but for the moment, I wish to point out that secondary matter is associated with each of these levels. However, I want you to consider our solar system as an evolving being in its own right. Whatever enters this solar system has an objective to develop, and when it has, it moves from one plane or world to another, either involvating, involving, or evolving. So, it appears that if I have my facts right, elemental essences are only found on the lowest 3 worlds of our solar system, from 47 down to 49. To us monads developing through the 4th kingdom of nature, it is the lowest 3 worlds that matter. I am now going to state that these elemental essences are found on planes 47 and 48, but not plane 49. How can you then have 3 grades of elemental essences? To answer this, look at the triad envelopes. You can see that the mental plane is divided between the first and second triads. This means that the elementals can be categorized as causal, mental, and emotional. Just to reiterate, although our solar system started with 9 grades of elemental essences, there are only 3 left. The reason is that the other grades have evolved down to plane 48 and then evolved further. So, the higher planes of our solar system have no secondary matter on them. Now, let's look at what can be achieved with a passively conscious elementary essence. If it is robotic, it has to receive instructions from a programmer. That programmer is any monad that is capable of active consciousness. This falls into 2 broad groups, tertiary monads and quaternary monads. For the time being, I wish to just focus on quaternary monads. This is us, by the way, but it can also be divas. If we have a thought and that thought has willpower behind it, what is actually happening? Remember, everything in the universe is based on matter. So a thought has to have a matter component. The same goes for emotions. That matter component is our friends, the elemental essences. I wish to quickly state here that the elemental essence itself is comprised of inordinately large numbers of primary atoms. They have not gone away. They are the foundation of all that is in our universe. If the consciousness field of our monad decides to have a thought or experience an emotion through our willpower, we fashion a structure that is called an elemental. This is where that second term comes into being. An elemental is an agglomeration of elemental essences. So, the monadic unit is the elemental essence, but the active thought or emotion is an elemental. This structure is initiated by us and does not form spontaneously. It also exists for as long as we keep our focus on it. The duration of its existence is also determined by the amount of energy we put into its formation. There is a myth firmly held by many students of esoterics that it is these elementals and their wayward nature that somehow rule us. I wish to make it clear right from the outset that, as stated earlier, elemental essences are robotic in their actions. They can initiate nothing. You are not being ruled by your demons. It is you who are actively creating and then sending forth those demons. The demons themselves are blameless for whatever transpires as a result of their formation. So what can transpire? And how does this aid the development of our elemental essence? The objective of the elemental essence, remember, is to evolve into the densest matter possible. It is trying to wake up. Though it may not know it, to achieve this, it has to experience the heaviest vibrations that can be afforded a monad, and this can only occur on the lowest plane of matter, plane 49. To get to this plane, it has slowly evolved from plane 44, and now exists within 2 envelopes of our planetary logos, mental and emotional, and split between 3 triadic levels within us and our surroundings, the emotional, the mental, and the causal. Within the mental and emotional worlds that surround our planet, there are 7 subplanes in each. These subplanes are characterized by the vibrational frequency of the elemental essences that fill these planes. Taking the example of the emotional plane, we know from previous presentations that the higher planes contain essences that vibrate to feelings such as love, compassion, and duty. The lowest 3 planes are elemental essences that are triggered by thoughts relating to hate, fear, and avarice. This does not mean that these elemental essences are somehow evil. Remember, they are just robots. They want to resonate at ever lower frequencies because they are involving, not evolving. Consequently, if you program them with your lower conscious vibrations, you create elementals that exhibit these characteristics. The creation of our emotional and mental worlds will be dealt with in a later presentation. For the time being, I just wish to emphasize the blameless character of secondary matter. It is what it is and does what we tell it to. So, that is a brief description of the second of our 4 grades of matter in our universe. Secondary level monads play a very active role in our lives and our personal evolution. I intend to continue their story in some detail in subsequent presentations. For now, we need to move on to the 3rd iteration of a monad known as a tertiary monad. That will be the subject of the next presentation. Thank you.